1340 96.5 KVGC in the studio with us today, CEO of the Amador County Fair, Rich Hoffman. Rich, good morning. Thanks for coming on today.
Morning, Jim.
Tough decision last night, 8-1 vote to cancel this year's Amador County Fair. Basically, not necessarily because of Corona-19, but budgetary matters that could be, do I want to say amplified by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, just to reiterate, 433 days to the number one small county fair. Yeah, so the board...
Have you changed the counter on the website? Yeah. You ought to do that.
I think they just took it down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but just to reiterate, the board had a tough decision last night. And I can tell you to a person, everyone on that 9-person board loves the fair and wanted nothing more than to see a path forward to put the fair on. But, we're all living through this coronavirus situation. And because the fair is, it runs such a tight budget, we couldn't, just from a fiscal perspective, gamble the little money we had on putting a fair together and then having it not come to fruition. Yeah. The margins are just too slim.
I think it was Fair Board President Lebenko that said last night, we're gambling with money we don't have.
Yeah, and we could certainly be doing that. So we have a fiscal and a fiduciary responsibility to the board and to the fair itself and the institution of the fair to make sure it lives another year.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, Rich, I was on the meeting last night, so I saw the spreadsheets that you put out. In our story this morning, we talk about if you would have gone through with the fair and the scenario of 50% attendance, you would be losing over $200,000. But if you don't have the fair, you're only out a little over $140,000. Right. How can you be out $140,000 if you don't have an event?
Yeah, well, there are fixed costs associated with the fairgrounds. Whether we have a fair or not, we have a power bill, we have a water bill. There are costs associated with operating grounds that large. So if you zero out the revenue from the fair, you can't completely zero out all the expenses that we have throughout that period. So basically the fair, the revenue from the fair ends up making up the expenses we have to keep the fair operating all year. You couple that with the fact that we haven't been able to host any interim events either. We had to cancel the Challenge of Champions rodeo and a number of other events that we had booked for the spring, our busiest time for interim events. This pandemic hit right at the time we were just starting to ramp up for we had a full calendar of events leading up to the fair as well.
Rich, the state passed a bill, I think a year or so ago, and we're just getting the money this year, a sales tax giving back to the fair system. But I hear in the governor's new budget, he's stripped that out of fairs, and that's going to go to the general fund for the state. Is that true? Do you know?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to review the budget, but basically the funding, it's Assembly Bill 1499.
Just a one-time thing?
No, it's the intention is for it to be an ongoing funding mechanism for fairs. It replaces the old mechanism of horse racing in California, funding fairs. Yeah. But it's based on sales tax that is collected at fairs. And if nobody's having fairs this year, that kind of puts us in a rough spot. So, if you looked at the numbers we shared last night, if there was no coronavirus and it was a perfect year, we held our fair, and we did receive this funding, $182,000 from Assembly Bill 1499, we would have at the end of the year been $195,000 in the black.
Yeah.
But because of the situation, having to cancel all these events, we find ourselves with a $150,000 deficit that we're going to have to try and figure out how to make up over between now and the end of the year.
So repeat that again, folks. You're going to be 150,000 in the hole.
Yeah, with no fair, we are our budget shows, with our burn rate currently, and that's with a bare minimum staff just to keep the fair from falling down. And we also have an obligation, the state asks us to keep the fair open and ready to be used in an emergency. We have I just renegotiate our contract with CAL FIRE for it to be used as a fire camp in case of an emergency.
Sure.
We're also available for other uses that the county may have if there's an emergency. If there's a PG&E outage, we're working with PG&E to have a charging and cooling center at the fairgrounds in Plymouth. So, the fair has a number of uses throughout the year. We're certainly not wishing for anything negative to happen in the county, but we're ready in case it does.
Talking with Amador County Fair CEO Rich Hoffman, the fair last night on an 8-1 vote canceled this year's fair. Rich, I read a letter from the Secretary of Agriculture that I thought was a pretty dire letter. It sounds like they're suggesting more cuts to staff and personnel, and turn the lights out at the fair.
Yeah, well, we're obligated to keep to run as tight a ship as possible. We're going to have to do the math, though. There are obligations that we have in terms of administering the fairgrounds, and that takes people to do. The other thing is, sometimes it costs more, especially when you're talking about state employees, to furlough or reduce somebody down than it would be to keep them, and you lose the benefit of their good work that they do. And I can tell you the folks at the fairgrounds do a lot more work than they get
because you
compensated
still have to
for.
pay into their retirement or their benefits into that, still at whether they're working or not.
Right.
So, Rich, something else that came up last night that someone mentioned, El Dorado County. They have moved the dates of their fair. Now, they're not worried. They're going to have a fair first part of July. So what makes them different than Amador County Fair?
Well, one thing, they're a nonprofit, so they're not a agricultural association. They're not a DAA or a state association. They're a county fair and a nonprofit. So basically, their funding works differently, and so that gives them the ability. Because their fair was earlier, they already spent all the money preparing for the fair. So Jody, the fair manager there, said to everybody, well, let's push it out. Can you hang on? And if we do it in July, will you do it in July? Save this date. And the bottom line is, if we are still in this COVID condition by the time July runs along, she's going to have to not do her fair.
Right.
So she's playing a poker game to the river. And she has the ability to do that we don't. She has the financial ability to do that.
And again, let's just back this up. While we call our fair the Amador County Fair, it's actually a state agricultural district that's set up by the state. So even though we call it the county fair, it's actually a state-run county fair.
Our board is appointed by the governor's office. Our staff kind of falls under the California Department of Agriculture Fairs and Expositions branch. So, we have all the mandates and obligations as state employees, but not the funding.
Well, the El Dorado County Fair is, I believe their fair board is either appointed by or is the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah.
And it is actually a county facility. Our fair is on a state facility.
Correct. It's a county facility and the fair is actually a nonprofit. Yeah.
Rich, what about the wine judging? Has the wine judging already been done? Is it going to be done?
Yeah, the wine competition is moving forward. It's scheduled to take place in October. So all the entries have been collected and they're being stored, and hopefully when October rolls around, things will be safe enough to do the judging.
Okay, what about beer judging? Same type?
We're still working through the details of that, but it hasn't been canceled.
And what about, so let's talk about, jellies, jams, fruits, vegetables. You're not going to be able to save a lot of fruits and vegetables. Will that move forward? Will the, judging for the hot chicken wings and all that, the special competitions? And what about the art shows, the children's, the kids building? Will those move forward in a different way, or will that maybe be done at a later time?
We're still working through that. I know that Calaveras has done a really good job. Their fair is earlier. It should have been this
weekend.
Should have been this weekend. Has done a really good job in taking some of those static entries and doing online virtual competitions. And certainly my plan is to try and incorporate that over the course of the summer and try and get people, because I know people have been working on projects for the fair and static displays, and I'd sure like to be able to get those displayed, even if it's just on an image on the fair's website, so people can look at those and comment, and maybe we'll have some type of online competitions rather than having them judged in a traditional way.
Now, Miss Amador, they've extended the deadline to enter today. Will there be a Miss Amador pageant this year?
I think the board has to make that call, but it seemed like, based on their discussion last night, that without a fair, it doesn't seem like it's something that would move forward.
And then, of course, this was talked about a lot last night, the junior livestock auction. Will there still be a junior livestock auction? Will there still be judging of animals? How's that all going to work?
Yeah, without a doubt, the fair is committed to helping the kids get these animals sold. So virtual auctions have been occurring throughout the state in the early spring fairs that canceled. We're working through the exact details on what that'll look like, but I can say that we will, for the kids, have some opportunity for them to get their animals to market and sold.
Rich, would there be a chance that we would move through stage 3 or into stage 3 enough to where we could hold the auction live, and that could take place on maybe have judgings on Friday and Saturday and the auction on Sunday, or maybe a 2-day auction Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah, we'll have to work through that. I think in terms of planning, we're kind of getting to that. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, we're getting to that go, no-go situation. So we're going to have to make the call and stick with it.
But as far as no-go, no-go, there will be. This is a go. There will be.
Go, no-go on whether we're virtual or live.
Option.
But I think, personally, I don't see a way forward to do a live with people there bidding type of an auction. With the... We're going to be in that type of event would still be considered a Phase 4 event, and we're not going to be there. So
will next year's fair now be an 8-day fair, because we had to give up 4 days this year?
I'm game. Yeah.
I've worked it. I did Voice of the Fair at a couple of fairs that were week-long fairs, and it gets, by Friday night, Saturday, it's getting a little bit long,
Yes.
Sunday can't come fast enough, so... Rich, thanks for coming on and talking with us on this. We've always had a good relationship with the fair on this. We're sad to see it go, but hey, I'm a businessman. I totally understand this, and it's for the best. Anything else you'd like to tell the folks out there?
No, we appreciate everybody's support, and I did put a little something on the fair's Facebook and webpage last night, and have received a lot of comments of support for the fair, and we know you love the fair, and I'm going to try and work diligently with the board to come up with some smaller events throughout the next few months to try and make up this gap. So kind of watch this space for those events. And we also, I feel an obligation to our organizations who rely on the fair for fundraising too.
Sure.
And we're going to try and get those folks looped into this and work together, and maybe have a drive-through fair food event or something.
Calaveras is actually doing that
Yeah.
tomorrow, I believe it is.
Yeah.
They've got a booth set up with.
So there are creative ideas, and we're certainly there's no shortage of creativity with the staff at the fair and the board, and we'll get over this hump.
Wow. All right, Rich Hoffman, CEO, Amador County Fair. Thanks for being with us today. Thank you.